In the deep rural shadows of Georgia's forgotten plantations, a story emerged that defied logic, reason, and every explanation historians tried to offer. It began with two 12-year-old enslaved twins whose names were carefully erased from records, yet whose actions became whispered legends among overseers, field hands, and even their masters. They were said to move in perfect silence, speak without words, and appear in places no child their age should have been able to reach. What made their story truly unsettling was not fear but confusion. Grown men who controlled entire estates could not explain how these children knew things they were never taught, or how they accomplished tasks that should have been impossible for bodies so young and oppressed. Night after night, strange patterns began to form around their presence. Crops would be restored after storms, locked barns mysteriously opened, and tools rearranged with careful precision long after the plantation slept. Some called it coincidence. Others dared to whisper words like omen, curse, or miracle. But no one could deny that wherever the twins walked, the rules of their cruel world seemed to bend in ways that challenged authority, power, and control. This is the untold story of the enslaved twins who turned silent suffering into an unsolvable mystery, a tale buried in history waiting to be uncovered. The 12-year-old twins were unlike anyone the plantation had ever seen, even among the many children born into bondage who grew up under the unforgiving sun of Georgia. From the moment they arrived, there was something about them that unsettled those who attempted to assert control. They were quiet, almost unnaturally so, moving with a kind of synchronized grace that made it seem as though they were two parts of the same being rather than two separate children. Their eyes, dark and penetrating, seemed to see not just the world around them but the thoughts and intentions of those nearby. The elders in the quarters whispered that the twins knew things they shouldn't know, and the older enslaved people exchanged glances that carried both awe and unease. The overseers first noticed it during routine work in the fields. Tasks that would normally require several adults to accomplish were completed almost before anyone could understand how it had been done. The twins worked together in ways that defied logic, passing tools, moving heavy loads, and tending to animals with a precision far beyond their years. It was as if they anticipated one another's movements perfectly, finishing each other's actions without a single spoken word. Even among children, coordination and timing are learned skills, yet these twins seemed to possess an innate understanding that left everyone around them staring in disbelief. Some of the older enslaved men muttered that it was unnatural, that no child should be able to carry a basket of crops, heavier than themselves, without faltering, let alone do so in perfect unison. Their abilities were not limited to physical tasks. It soon became apparent that the twins had a kind of intuitive intelligence, a sixth sense that allowed them to solve problems before anyone else had even noticed they existed. When a tool broke or a fence needed repair, they would appear with exactly what was required, often having anticipated the need hours or even days in advance. One account tells of a morning when a flood had damaged a section of the plantation's irrigation system. Workers had resigned themselves to spending the day trying to repair it, but the twins arrived quietly, assessed the situation, and moved from one point to another in a silent rhythm that no one could follow. By midday, the water was flowing again as if nothing had ever happened, leaving the overseers bewildered and the adult laborers murmuring about impossible children. The mysterious abilities of the twins did not go unnoticed by the master of the plantation, a man who prided himself on discipline and control. At first he dismissed the stories as exaggeration, convinced that children so young could not possibly achieve such feats. But his skepticism quickly turned to alarm when he witnessed their talents firsthand. One afternoon he demanded that the twins carry a stack of barrels across the yard, a task he assumed would prove their. Instead, the twins moved with a quiet determination that seemed to defy exhaustion, balancing and maneuvering the barrels with such skill that the master's jaw dropped. He tried to order them to fail, to stumble, to show weakness, but they did not. They simply moved, and the work was done without incident, leaving the adult overseers questioning not only their abilities but the very rules of the world they believed they controlled. Even more disturbing to those around them was the twins' uncanny awareness of people's intention. They could anticipate anger, fear, or deceit in ways that unsettled grown men who were used to exerting authority over others. Stories spread of the twins dodging punishments before they were even administered, knowing when an overseer intended to punish them, and avoiding confrontation with an almost preternatural timing. Some believed they could hear thoughts, while others insisted they had learned to read the subtle shifts in body language that most adults overlooked. Whatever the truth, it became impossible for the men in power to act with certainty around them. The twins operated in a space where control was irrelevant, their presence alone undermining the very hierarchy the plantation relied upon. The adults among the enslaved people were equally puzzled, though their reactions were tempered by experience. They watched the twins with a mixture of fear and admiration, understanding that children with such abilities could be dangerous in a world where survival depended on obedience. At the same time, there was a kind of reverence, an acknowledgement that these twins possessed a gift or knowledge that no one else could claim. Some elders claimed that the children were protected by something beyond human understanding, whispering to each other that they were guided by spirits or forces that the plantation's white masters could never comprehend. Others cautioned that the twins' abilities might attract attention, that the more people saw their talents, the more dangerous it could become for them. Yet the twins seemed unafraid, moving through their environment with confidence and focus that suggested they understood something that no one else did. Even within the enslaved quarters, the twins' presence caused a subtle shift. Younger children gravitated toward them, sensing an energy that made them feel both safe and inspired. They taught others through example rather than instruction, showing how to move quietly, how to anticipate needs, how to act without speaking. Their lessons were absorbed instinctively, creating a ripple effect that changed the way work and daily life were conducted among the enslaved population. It was not just that the twins could perform incredible feats themselves, but that they seemed to elevate those around them, enhancing the abilities of others simply through proximity and observation. There were also moments of outright mystery. Tools or possessions would vanish from one location only to reappear perfectly arranged somewhere else, often after the twins had been seen nearby. Animals seemed unusually responsive to them, following silently without coercion. Even the most hardened overseers found themselves questioning reality when they witnessed these events. Some nights, whispered stories circulated that the twins could appear in one part of the plantation while simultaneously being seen elsewhere, though no one could confirm such claim. These tales fed a growing legend, one that mixed fear, awe, and a sense of the uncanny. Despite the attention and scrutiny, the twins remained largely inscrutable. They spoke only when necessary, often in short, precise sentences that revealed more understanding than most adults possessed. Their silence, however, was perhaps their most powerful tool, allowing them to observe, anticipate, and act without revealing the full extent of their ability. Those who tried to force them into submission quickly discovered that the twins' intelligence and coordination made them impossible to predict or control. Every attempt to dominate them seemed to backfire, reinforcing the growing notion among the plantation's white authorities that these were no ordinary children, that their talents were beyond natural explanation. By the time the twins reached their 12th year, the legend surrounding them had already begun to spread beyond the plantation. Visitors and traders passing through Georgia heard whispers of children who could do the work of 10 adults, who seemed to know things no one had taught them, and who could move through space and time with a grace that defied human understanding. The enslaved population told stories that blended reality with something else entirely, something mystical or supernatural, cementing the twins' place as figures who could not be explained, controlled, or ignored. It was clear to anyone paying attention that these twins possessed a rare combination of intellect, coordination, intuition, and presence. The adults around them, both enslaved and free, could only marvel, fear, and try to make sense of what they were witnessing. No amount of punishment, coercion, or instruction seemed to diminish their abilities. If anything, the twins grew more adept, more precise, and more mysterious with each passing day. To observe them was to confront the limits of human understanding, to face the uncomfortable truth that some lives, even in the harshest of circumstances, could not be contained by ordinary rules or explanation. The twins' extraordinary abilities left an indelible mark on the plantation, shaping the memories of those who saw them, and the stories that would be passed down in hushed tones for years to come. They were a living enigma, a puzzle that no adult could solve, and a reminder that even in the darkest chapters of history there were individuals whose presence challenged the boundaries of power, control, and human comprehension. Strange events seemed to follow the twins wherever they went on the plantation, creating a series of occurrences that no one could explain, rationalize, or ignore. At first, the inexplicable happenings were subtle, small shifts that could be written off as coincidence. A basket left on the ground would be found upright and neatly organized later in the day. A broken fence post would mysteriously be righted overnight, though no adult had been seen doing it. Tools that had gone missing would reappear in their proper places without any evidence of human interference. Yet as the weeks passed, the frequency and intensity of these events increased, leaving even the most skeptical overseers unsettled. There was a palpable sense that the twins' presence itself altered the rhythm of the plantation, bending the ordinary rules that governed daily life in ways no one could anticipate. The adults in the enslaved quarters began to notice patterns. Animals seemed unusually calm or obedient around the twins, responding to subtle gestures or sounds that no one else noticed. Chickens would gather without prompting, dogs would follow their movements silently, and even the most stubborn mules seemed to yield to their direction. It was as though the children had an innate understanding of the natural world that allowed them to communicate with it in ways impossible to articulate. Fields that were neglected or damaged somehow appeared tended when the twins were present, crops standing taller or straighter than expected, as if the children's very energy could influence growth and restoration. This was not merely physical labor, it was as though they were capable of sensing the environment and adjusting it in ways that defied explanation. Visitors to the plantation, including traders and itinerant workers, often reported unusual incidents around the twins. Some swore they had witnessed the children appear and disappear from different parts of the property with impossible speed. Others claimed that the twins could seem to anticipate questions or demands, responding before they were even spoken. While such accounts were dismissed by many as exaggeration, the repetition and consistency of these stories began to cultivate a sense of unease and fear among those who came into contact with the twins. Rumors spread beyond the immediate plantation, carried by traders and travelers, and the children became figures of whispered curiosity and awe in the surrounding areas. One of the most puzzling aspects of the twins' influence was the way objects seemed to move in relation to their intention. A locked barn would sometimes be found open with its contents arranged in neat order, and no one could account for how this happened. On other occasions, missing tools or supplies would reappear in locations where they were most needed, as though the children had foreseen the problem and corrected it in advance. Even the plantation's master, who prided himself on discipline and control, began to feel a growing frustration. Orders could not account for the subtle manipulations of the twins' presence, and attempts to impose authority often ended with outcomes that defied expectation. It was as though the children operated according to a different set of rules, one invisible to those around. The timing of these events added to their mystique. Many occurrences seemed to coincide with moments of tension or potential disaster. A storm that threatened to ruin a section of the crops would pass without causing harm in areas where the twins were active. Fires that started in the barns mysteriously went out before spreading, often without any intervention from adults. Even simple accidents were averted with uncanny precision, suggesting a level of foresight and awareness that no child could reasonably possess. The enslaved workers began to treat the twins with a mixture of reverence and caution, understanding that their abilities might be protective yet also difficult to predict. Another factor contributing to the twins' mystique was the way their actions were intertwined. They rarely acted independently. Instead, they moved in a synchronized manner, complementing each other's efforts to create outcomes that seemed miraculous. A complicated task requiring multiple steps, repairing a fence, tending to animals, or managing water flow could be executed seamlessly by the twins in silence, leaving adult observers struggling to follow their method. Coordination of this magnitude, especially in children so young, was unheard of. It suggested not only exceptional intelligence and skill but also a connection between them that transcended ordinary human understanding. Their movements, though subtle, were precise, fluid, and almost ritualistic, as though each step was preordained yet guided by instinct and intuition. Even the most skeptical of overseers had to acknowledge that something beyond ordinary comprehension was occurring. Whispers spread among the staff that the twins were touched by forces beyond the natural, that they possessed knowledge or abilities that no one else could access. Some suggested they were gifted in ways that might be considered mystical, spiritual, or even supernatural, though no one could define the source or nature of their talents. Fear mingled with fascination as the twins continued to act in ways that challenged both logic and authority. Attempts to punish or limit their actions were often met with unexpected outcomes. A tool would be returned precisely to its rightful place, or a situation would resolve itself in a manner that undermined the overseer's intention, reinforcing the notion that the twins' influence was beyond human control. It was not only the adults who were affected. Younger children in the quarters were drawn to the twins, watching and learning from them in silence. They seemed to absorb lessons not through words but through observation, imitating movements, understanding patterns, and sensing cues that were invisible to everyone else. The twins had a way of creating order out of chaos, turning confusion and disorder into structured outcomes without any apparent effort. This subtle yet profound effect extended to every corner of the plantation, leaving a trail of organization, calm, and efficiency in their way. As time passed, the twins' reputation grew. Stories of their actions spread to nearby plantations where they were described in tones of awe and fear. Visitors spoke of children who seemed to move with impossible skill, who anticipated needs, and who could influence their surroundings in ways that defied explanation. These tales became part of the collective memory of the region, intertwining fact, speculation, and legend. Each retelling emphasized the inexplicability of the twins' presence, reinforcing the sense that they were not merely children but agents of something larger, something that challenged conventional understanding of what was possible. Perhaps most remarkable was the twins' apparent lack of fear or self-consciousness. They carried out their tasks with quiet confidence, never showing signs of doubt or hesitation even in situations that would have overwhelmed most adults. This calm authority amplified the sense of mystery surrounding them, as observers struggled to reconcile the children's youth with the precision, intelligence and influence they exhibited. The twins operated on a level that made ordinary rules of behavior, power, and control seem irrelevant. Every action was measured, deliberate, and effective, leaving a trail of astonished adults and whispered speculation in their wake. The cumulative effect of these events created an atmosphere on the plantation that was impossible to ignore. The children's influence extended beyond physical labor, shaping the perceptions, behaviors, and beliefs of everyone around them. Adults found themselves questioning their assumptions, reconsidering what was possible, and in some cases fearing what they could not explain. Their presence became a living puzzle, a continuous demonstration that the ordinary rules of the world did not apply in the same way when the twins were involved. They were enigmatic, inexplicable, and undeniably powerful in their subtlety, leaving a legacy of mystery that could not be reconciled with the ordinary expectations of the people who lived and worked on the plantation. The twins' actions did more than simply amaze or mystify those around them. They directly challenged the authority of everyone who attempted to control them. From the moment they arrived on the plantation, it became clear that conventional methods of discipline, coercion, and oversight were ineffective. Overseers who were accustomed to exerting unquestioned control over children and adults alike found themselves frustrated, confused, and in some cases afraid. The twins' obedience could not be commanded, their attention could not be forced, and their skills could not be contained. They acted with a precision and awareness that undermined the very hierarchy upon which the plantation depended, creating an invisible but undeniable disruption in the system of power. Attempts to punish the twins often backfired in ways that left overseers humiliated and adult laborers in disbelief. One of the most notorious incidents involved a broken cart that the overseer insisted should be moved immediately. The twins were ordered to lift it together, a task the adult expected would be beyond their ability. Yet they approached the cart calmly, coordinated their movements perfectly, and managed not only to lift and relocate it but also to position it in a manner that maximized efficiency for the day's work. The overseer, who had anticipated a failure that would reinforce his authority, instead witnessed an outcome that made him appear incompetent in front of others. Such incidents were repeated again and again, leaving a trail of astonishment that gradually eroded the sense of absolute control the plantation's leaders assumed they held. The twins' challenge to authority was not limited to physical tasks. They displayed a level of intuition and foresight that allowed them to navigate the complex social and power dynamics of the plantation with remarkable skill. They seemed to sense when overseers were plotting punishment or when other adults were attempting to manipulate them, allowing the twins to act in ways that avoided confrontation or neutralized threats. This awareness created a kind of invisible shield around them, frustrating those who relied on fear and discipline to maintain order. Adults quickly realized that traditional strategies, yelling, threats, or physical punishment, were largely ineffective, and in some cases only served to highlight the twins' ingenuity and control. Even the enslaved adults, who were accustomed to navigating oppressive hierarchies with subtlety and caution, could see that the twins operated on a level of autonomy few could imagine. While adults were often required to follow rules to survive, the twins' decisions seemed guided by an internal logic that did not conform to expectation. Their actions could redirect work, reorder tasks, and anticipate needs without overt direction. Observers began to understand that the twins were not merely performing tasks. They were asserting agency in subtle ways that resisted domination. It was as though their very existence challenged the established power structures, demonstrating that authority could be subverted not through rebellion or violence but through extraordinary intelligence, coordination, and presence. Stories circulated of the twins turning situations to their advantage with startling effectiveness. If an overseer tried to assign them impossible workloads, they would complete the task in a manner that highlighted the overseer's limitation. If they were punished, the consequences would often reveal a flaw in the system of control itself. Adults whispered about these incidents in hushed tones, marveling at how the children seemed to outsmart those who were supposed to command them. It was not arrogance in the conventional sense, rather it was a quiet, confident mastery of circumstance that left everyone around them scrambling to understand what had happened. The twins' behavior became a living demonstration that authority alone was insufficient to guarantee compliance, particularly when faced with individuals who possessed intelligence, intuition, and a unique bond that allowed them to act in concert. The twins' ability to challenge authority was magnified by their apparent immunity to intimidation. Many overseers relied on fear as a primary tool of control, expecting that children, especially enslaved children, would yield to threats of punishment or deprivation. Yet the twins rarely flinched or hesitated. They met the gaze of those attempting to assert dominance with calm, unflinching attention, their bodies and movements betraying no sign of fear. This composure unnerved adults, who were accustomed to unquestioned obedience,
and it gradually changed the dynamic on the plantation. The twins demonstrated that power could be exercised in ways that did not rely on physical strength or coercion, introducing a subtle but profound shift in how authority was perceived. The twins also had a way of subtly influencing the adults around them, reshaping behavior and expectations without overtly confronting anyone. Their coordinated actions often highlighted inefficiencies or mistakes, prompting adults to adjust their own work without direct instruction. In this way, the twins exercised authority not through command but through demonstration, showing that competence, foresight, and cooperation could achieve outcomes that fear and control could not. The adults quickly learned to watch and follow rather than to impose, recognizing that attempting to dominate the twins directly was both futile and counterproductive. This form of influence, indirect yet undeniable, became a defining characteristic of their presence on the plantation. Even the plantation master, who was far removed from daily labor but obsessed with maintaining control, became aware of the twins' unique challenge to his authority. Reports of their abilities reached him repeatedly, prompting visits to the fields where he could observe first. He attempted to impose strict oversight, assigning additional duties and closely monitoring their movements, but the twins continued to demonstrate an uncanny ability to anticipate needs, adapt to challenges, and achieve results beyond expectation. Each encounter eroded his sense of omnipotence, forcing him to acknowledge that the twins operated in a realm beyond ordinary comprehension, where his authority was limited and often irrelevant. The twins' challenge to authority was not purely a matter of defiance. It was rooted in their extraordinary capabilities. They were capable of performing feats of intelligence, coordination, and foresight that made conventional control mechanisms obsolete. Whether moving heavy objects with perfect precision, anticipating problems before they occurred, or subtly guiding the behavior of those around them, their actions consistently demonstrated that they could navigate the rigid structures of the plantation world on their own terms. Adults who tried to assert dominance over them often found themselves unintentionally highlighting the twins' mastery, further reinforcing the children's reputation and the sense that the established order could be disrupted. Social dynamics on the plantation also shifted as a result of the twins' presence. Younger enslaved children began to look to them for guidance, observing and imitating without formal instruction. Adult laborers, while cautious, began to rely on the twins' abilities to complete tasks more efficiently. Even the animals seemed to recognize the authority of the twins, responding to their movements and intentions with an almost instinctual obedience. This pervasive influence subtly undermined the hierarchical structures that were meant to maintain control, creating a unique environment where the twins' autonomy shaped both work and social interaction. Perhaps most striking was the way the twins turned the very concept of power on its head. Whereas authority on the plantation was traditionally enforced through physical strength, fear, and coercion, the twins demonstrated that influence could emerge from skill, intelligence, intuition, and coordination. They created order, solved problems, and achieved outcomes that adults could not, all while remaining children in appearance and demeanor. This inversion of expectations unsettled everyone around them, challenging deeply ingrained assumptions about age, power, and control. Ultimately, the twins' actions became a living testament to the limitations of authority in the face of extraordinary ability. They revealed that power alone cannot command respect, obedience, or effectiveness when confronted with intelligence, foresight, and coordination that surpass conventional understanding. The adults on the plantation, both enslaved and free, were forced to acknowledge that these children were not simply subjects to be controlled, but active agents capable of reshaping the environment, influencing others, and defying the very structures of power that sought to dominate them. The story of the 12-year-old enslaved twins in Georgia is more than just a tale of extraordinary abilities. It is a story that defies explanation, challenges the limits of human understanding, and exposes the fragility of power. These children, barely old enough to stand on their own, moved through a world designed to suppress them with a grace, intelligence, and intuition that no adult could contend. Their presence left an indelible mark on the plantation, on those who witnessed them, and on history itself, even if the details of their lives were erased from official record. What makes their story unforgettable is not just the acts they performed or the mysteries they created, but the way they disrupted the very rules of control and authority. They showed that even in the darkest corners of human cruelty, there can exist brilliance, resilience, and the power to challenge expectation. Adults who had relied on fear, force, and hierarchy were powerless against them. The twins' silent mastery exposed the limits of domination, and revealed a hidden strength that could not be broken or controlled. And yet, even as their legend spread, the twins themselves remained enigmatic, almost otherworldly, children who moved through the world with an understanding and purpose that no one could fully comprehend. They were in every sense, A living mystery, a puzzle that confounded overseers, inspired fellow enslaved people, and left historians scratching their heads centuries later. Their story reminds us that history is filled with voices and lives that were never fully documented, that sometimes the most remarkable acts go unseen or unrecorded, and that extraordinary human potential can emerge even in the most impossible circumstance. The twins' abilities, their courage and their quiet defiance continue to resonate, leaving us with a chilling, unforgettable question: how much of what we consider impossible might actually be real, hidden in the shadows of forgotten history?